Welcome back to the Provisioning Manager video series. My name is Tom Bammert from Acadian Labs. Today we're going to be talking about provisioning jobs, and particularly basic provisioning jobs in this video demonstration. Provisioning Manager is extremely flexible. Therefore, there are many, everything from simple to complex jobs you can create. And the goal of this video in particular is to start talking about some of the basics in job building. So first thing I want to talk about is really what are jobs. And if we take a job, and if you, obviously, hopefully you've watched the prior videos on building templates, jobs are basically actions that are a culmination of provisioning templates, such as user templates, line templates, phone, and voicemail. So in this case, or for example, let's say you want to create a user, you want to give them a line, you want to give them a phone, of course, right? And you want to give them voicemail. That's a group of templates that you're creating, putting into a job to formulate an action that you want to perform. And then, of course, optionally, you can roll in site templates, which really they basically do the same thing as we discussed prior, where site templates are going to apply site-specific settings to that user line, phone, and voicemail. And then that moves on to performing an actual provision function. So, it's very, very simple when you look at it, what a job is, right? It's just what do you want that job to achieve? And how you put those building blocks together, which of course the building blocks templates, that's another story, right? So it's going to be very much specific to your environment. So what do we need to get started here? Well, first of all, on the surface, aside from obviously having Provisioning Manager deployed, up and running, and following along with some of those best practices to have the system ready, you definitely need to have things like your global variables, your DN pools, and your templates built. If you don't have that stuff, if you haven't watched the prior videos, you're not really going to be ready to start building out jobs. What you're going to find is you're going to have to keep going back and adding those things as you go along, and it just won't be as an efficient of a process. And that really comes down to planning for jobs, right? So you need to have a plan in place. And what do I mean by a plan? Well, essentially just define what actions you want to perform. You don't have to know them all day one, but if you look at your existing process, what do you typically do when you're provisioning on a day-to-day basis in Communications Manager and other applications like Unity, right? What do you build for a user? How many different scenarios do you have when you build your users? Those are all going to lead you to define, what jobs you need. For example, let's say that I have some users that just get a end user, right? A voicemail box, a line, and one device. That's a job. Right? That's what I'm going to build a job to perform those actions, build those elements in my applications. I might have another user who maybe they're a mobile user, and they get, not only do they get a phone for when they're in the office, but I've got a user, I've got a line, I've got multiple phones, like a hard phone, maybe Jabber devices, and then I've got, voicemail, and maybe they get single number each as well because they're always on the road. That's another scenario, therefore that's another job. And you can build as many of these as you need, but really what you want to do is try to get those core jobs defined so you know. And this is the same process that you're going to apply to building your templates, because you're going to need to know what building blocks you need. You need to know that you need an SNR, or a remote device profile template, or a device profile template, or a phone template. So just make sure you think about that. But really what we're going to do is now let's move on and get started, building out some of these basic jobs to help you understand, what you can do with Provisioning Manager. In order to create jobs, you're going to need the same privileges you had to create and modify templates. In this case, because we want to make some changes on the service group as well, we're going to log in as an administrator. So you'll know you have the proper rights if you see the templates menu on the left side. In this case, we want to see the system menu. So I am logged in as an administrator, therefore I have access to both of those. So before we get started, the reason why I logged in as an administrator is, if you recall, I was talking about using site templates. And in this demonstration, when we build jobs, we're going to incorporate site templates. And as I mentioned, site templates, drastically reduce the number of jobs that you need to create. So in order to enable them, it's done on a per service group level. In this case, we only have one service group in this system. So I'm going to go click on System and then Service Groups on the left here. And I'm going to go to my North America service group. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit right below de-aging and self-provisioning. You'll see a checkbox to enable site template and require site template. Enable site template will actually it will display the option, drop-down option to leverage site templates in your provision. The require field will not allow you to submit a provision without selecting a site template. My recommendation is that if you're going to enable them, you require them. It's just unfortunately human nature that if you don't, typically people will forget to select it. And remember, if they don't select it and they try to perform the provision, the right settings may not be applied to the job. So with that done, we're going to go ahead and hit save. And now I've got site templates enabled. So now we can move on to jobs. So the first place I need to go is, if you recall in the previous video, one, you have to have your templates created before you can move forward on this. So the first thing we need to do here is go to Job Builder to start creating jobs. And I will mention that if you watched the last video, where I created some templates in my demonstration, I've added to those. So I've done that offline, and I've done that to expedite basically the process of demonstrating how to build jobs. So the first thing we want to do is I want to start off today with focusing on, this is the basic job builder video, or basic job provisioning jobs, is to really focus on some of the most common jobs, but also some of the more basic jobs. We will cover more advanced in another video demonstration. So with that said, the first thing we're going to do is the simplest job, and probably a fairly common one. In order to do that, I'm going to come up here and click Add. When I click Add, I'm going to be prompted first for the name of the job. In this case, what we're going to create is a public space phone, also known as a common area phone, right? And public space phone, in this case, is going to have a device, so a hard phone, and a line, and that's it. So when I'm thinking about building jobs, I have to think about the order in Provisioning Manager, right? What is going to be the top level? Because as you'll see when we build these, it's basically how you put the building blocks of the templates together defines what and how things are created, what the relationship is. So I'll explain that as I go along. So first, how do we add a template, right? So if you look on the right side over here, you're going to see that we have template categories. That's really all these are. So everything you created under site templates on the left side, or sorry, not site templates, but under templates on the left side, basically will show up under these categories, the appropriate categories. So for instance, the first thing I want to add is a phone. So I'm going to click on Phones, which is right under Device Profile. Now I get a list of the devices that I have configured, or templates I've configured for these devices. And this will include everything from add to basically my edit and delete. You'll notice that the adds are a different color. The edit and deletes are actually a tone of red, and then the other ones are essentially a tone of green, just to give you a little differentiation. So what I want to do is I'm going to add an 8861 public space phone. And what I do here is I basically put my mouse, or click on my mouse, drag and drop the 8861 public space template over. You'll see it turn green here. I drop it in. And the first thing that pops up is a Set Placeholders window in Job Builder. What are placeholders? Placeholders are exactly like they sound. They create a placeholder for you to put additional templates into the job. So in other words, you need to tell the job what you want to do next, right? In this case, what do I want to add? I want to add one line. Now remember, we will cover adding multiple lines later on. We're going to stick to the more basic common jobs at this point. So we're going to add one line to this device. I go ahead and click one, and I'm done. I hit continue. So what happens now is we have this blank box here, and now I can add a line or an intercom, because we will support both of those. So I go over to my, basically my template types here, my template categories, and I select line. I want to mention something first. If I happen to come up here to phones and try to drag a phone over, it's not going to let me do it. So we will ensure that you do not drag the wrong type of template into that field. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, as I select a line, is I'm going to choose the line that I want. And in this case, it's a public space phone, so I want a line that has no voicemail, basically not a user line. So I drag over my universal line template, and at this point, it's going to pop up this placeholders box again because I can add other things under here. I could put voicemail or something of that nature. In this case, I don't want to do it. So what do? Just hit continue. You're not forced to add something there. So I'm pretty much ready to save this job with one exception. I need to assign access. If you look down below, you'll see the job access. You have to assign a minimum of one group in order to save this job. In this case, I'm happy to add all of my groups. So I'm going to add those. If you're adding a bunch of jobs and you're not sure and you don't want to publish them to all your groups right away, by all means, just put them in the administrators group. You can go back through system and security like we reviewed before, and you can add rights to those jobs. So now at this point, I'm going to go up here, hit save, and my job is added. So what I want to do is I've got a couple things here. So I've got, you can't see this on the top, but I'm going to tab over to Communications Manager. I've got Communications Manager up here that my system's hooked up to, and I've got Unity Connection. Now this is the cluster that we integrated to as we went through these demonstration videos. So this is really all happening pretty much in real time. So what I'm going to do now is, before I move on to creating other jobs, I always suggest that you test jobs as you create them. All right. And this is important because the last thing you want to do is build out, a bunch of jobs, spend all your time doing it, and then find out that you missed something key in your jobs, right? They're all going to be a little different. Most likely there's not going to be a problem with all your jobs, but it's good to test as you go through. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go up to, if you look on the left side, we have templates, and above templates, we have actions. And this is the first time we're going to really be using the actions menu in these demonstrations. So when I go to actions, the top level, because I'm an administrator, I see everything. The top level is provision. I'm going to click on provision. So once I click on provision, you can see the one job I created. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that over, and now my job comes up. This is all the information that I need to fill in order to process this job. So the first thing I want to do, pick a site template. I only have one, so that's pretty easy. So I'm New York Standard user. Device location, this is the first example that you'll see of a global variable being used in a provision. So remember, I said a global variable allows you to to input data that's required for your provision. So in this case, I have device location. So that's going to be my conference room phone name. So I'm going to say this is conference room 202. Okay. Now I need to move down. MAC address is something, of course, that's required. You could put the real MAC in here. And I will point out that the MAC address of this phone could be an existing device that's already on your network. So let's say you were using auto registration in Communications Manager, and you already put that phone out in the conference room, and now you want to provision it. Absolutely fine. Or if the phone's sitting on your desk and you're typing the MAC off the box or the back of the phone, fine as well. In my case, I don't have a real phone that I'm using, so I'm going to generate a MAC address here. Now, if this MAC address were used in the system, and when I do that, we do a real-time check, and it would pop up a message letting you know that that MAC address is in use, and it's going to be overwritten. So we do give you the ability to overwrite the device, and that's what I meant about if it's already in there, it's fine. Owner user ID, I've selected this in my template to be an optional setting. I'm not going to set the owner user ID here because this is a public space phone. So this is going to go in as an anonymous association. The last thing that we have to fill in here is directory number. Okay, so if we go to directory number, we're going to basically go ahead and choose one. So I'm going to choose 5602, okay? And that matches conference room 202, so that was easy. Now I'm at the point where I can provision, but I want to show you something. So we see device location. I have that set to be my phone description, right? So I'm going to come here. I'm going to say phone description contains conference room 202. We have no phone. So let's go back and let's go up and hit perform because we're at the point we're going to perform. On the right side now, you're going to see the queue kick off and say, success, you've just built the phone. What happened? Well, you added a line, you added a phone. If I look at the details, I can email these details as well if I want. So I'm going to click OK here, but I'm going to come right back to Communications Manager and I'm going to click Find. There you go. So now you see that that phone was added in a split second, and I can click on that. And this is what I meant by testing. look at the details. Make sure that, the phone button templates are set the way you want them, that the description is going in, the CSSs are being set according to the site template, right? It's an anonymous user. Just take a look at those settings. Go to the line, look around, make sure that's good. And this is all going to be part of your testing when you're doing this. I mean, you're implementing a new provisioning tool that is the whole goal of this thing is to make sure that you're not putting devices in with errors. You're putting them in according to your standards. You want to make sure that those standards are set properly. So go down, check your call forwarding, all those settings, make sure everything looks copacetic. And assuming everything is good, you can mark that off as a success, right? So now let's go back to Provisioning Manager. We have successfully created that job. So let's move on to something a little bit more complicated, right? Now I'm going to go back to templates and I'm going to go to Job Builder. And we're going to build off this concept. So now I'm going to click Add. And what do I want to do? I'm going to onboard standard user. And by the way, you can name this whatever you want. It's got to be what makes sense for your organization. You might already have nomenclature that you use that is common and people understand. That's totally fine. In my case, I'm going to onboard a standard user. What does that mean? Well, standard user is going to be someone who gets the basics, right? Now, the difference here is now I'm implementing a job where I have a user. So that would mean, what is my top level going to be? I could tell you from working with many clients that we've implemented this for, that I haven't found one case where user would not be the top level, right? Because user is the owner of everything you're about to create. So I'm going to come over to my templates here. Remember, my template categories. I'm going to click user, and I'm going to pull my universal user over. Okay, and then of course I get my placeholders window. I'm going to go a little faster here because we've went over this stuff before. So now what do I want to add? Well, normally you could say, oh, I want to add phones, lines, voicemail. No, we want to think about this because this is very flexible and there's a lot of different ways to do it. And there may be, a different way that's right for your organization, but most likely, if I want the user to have a line, I want to do line next and then hit continue. And you'll see why I did that. Now I'm going to go over and select line. And I'm going to do universal user line with voicemail for this user. Now let's add the phones. And the reason why I want to do that is because if I chose my phones and voicemail, right, I would have to do a lot more work, because if I put everything under the line, now the user gets the line and now the line gets put on the phones that I add under here. And I'm going to add 4 phones, right? Because I'm going to do some actually, you know what? For this user, let's keep it simple. We'll do 1 phone for now. And so we'll add 1 phone and we'll add 1 voicemail. Okay. And we'll go ahead and hit continue. And now we have our placeholders and we go over Unity connections first, universal voicemail. We go over to phone. And then we're going to go to, let's do an 8841 because this is a standard user. So they're going to get this common 8841 phone. Add my template access, hit save, okay, and we should be good to go. So let's do the same thing again. Let's test this out. Let's see what this looks like. So we'll go back here. We'll onboard standard user. We're going to select a New York site template again because that's the only one I have. Now, when I click on this box, what you're going to see here is this is giving me a live lookup of my users in Communications Manager, right? So basically, because my CCM is LDAP integrated, I can select a user that's already synchronized. They don't have any configuration, but they're already synchronized. So let's say we want to do, I don't know, let's find Bobby something here. All right, let's do Bobby Moto, okay? So notice it populates the first name and last name for me. Also another great benefit of using LDAP integration, because we know the first name and last name, we can pull it in for you. Saves you typing. You can edit this, by the way. So in case maybe Bobby goes by Bob, you can edit that. So now directory number, same thing. Directory number management is going to prevent me from using any other number I did. So we'll pick 5606 here. Generate a MAC address again. I'm going to change that to a real MAC, and we'll talk about virtual MACs later. So if you're wondering what that button's for, this would normally probably be the real MAC of the phone, unless you're using our self-provisioning feature, which we will get to in a later video. We're ready to go. So I want to say Bobby Moto. So let's go back and let's first just refresh Unity here, right? No Bobby Moto. I come over to here. Let's, we're going to search for, I believe it was MOTTO. I don't see anything in there. We'll come back. All right, we're ready to hit perform. So we go ahead, that's going to process on the right side. You'll see that going through. If we don't get any errors, we're expecting to see a nice success message over there. Once that's done, we can view the details and see that we've added a bunch of devices in there. Now you might see, hey, why did it update user 3 times? Well, we keep track of everything that we do. And because of the way Call Manager is built, you essentially might be updating the user 3 times. So what I mean is, in this case, what am I doing? Well, I'm setting the password credentials. In this case, what am I doing? I'm setting the primary extension. So it's just multiple steps. That's why you see that in there multiple times. So don't worry about it if you see multiple times. As long as you don't see an error, you're in good shape. So ultimately now I'm going to come back up and I'm going to hit find, right? And there we go. We see Bobby Moto. He's configured. And I look down, I do some testing. Hey, look, his owner user ID is set. If I come over here, right, this is all about your testing. Make sure that things are done right. The phone's associated, we know that's good. If I scroll all the way down, the user's associated with the line. I can look at the user. I can make sure things look good there. There's the controlled device. There's my standard groups. Right? My primary extension is set. So these are things you want to test for. And you may not use all these, by the way. I'm just making a point of making sure you test. Now we also want to make sure that we create them in Unity. And we did. So here's Bobby Moto in Unity. Right? So done and done. So we'll go back to the list here. Whoops, sorry, I didn't want to go there. We can go back to our user list. And then we'll go back to our phone list here, our user list. And then we'll head back to PME. Okay, so basically now we've got a couple of jobs built, and really those jobs are the simplest of simple phones, which is a public space phone, and then one standard user job. So we're gonna turn it up a little bit here, right? We're gonna basically build a job that's a little more complex, right? So I'm going to say, let's call this onboard power user, right? I'm just coming up with something descriptive here. It's gonna be in your organization. It's gonna be a little different depending upon what you're building. But you might have mobile users, you might have executive users, you might have standard users. Who knows, right? But this is just an example of what you can do. So my power user, what's my power user gonna have? All right. Well, first thing, same exact deal. I'm going to start off with a universal user, right? I am going to give that user a line, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. I'm going to go to line, and again, I'm going to go faster on this. Universal line with voicemail. In this case, I'm actually going to add 4 phones, okay? So now I'm going to add voicemail, right? And I'm going to hit continue. So voicemail, same deal. I'm going to go here, universal VM, right? Now I got all these phones. What do I want to do? I want to go up to phones. And in here, I'm going to give him Jabber for desktop, Jabber for iPhone, Jabber for tablet, right? And now I'm going to get to phone. And I have a couple choices here. And I want to use this to demonstrate the power of phone groups. Now, if my power user always got an 8861, I could drag that over and I'm done, right? But I want to do something a little different here. What if my power users could either get a 41, a 61, whatever? Click phone group. What phone group does is it allows you to drag multiple phones in there. So I can drag this 41 and I can drag this 61. And you might be saying, well, what's the difference between that and the other phones above it? So the Jabber devices are never going to show up in the provision for me to select or deselect. But these phones are. The 41 and the 61 will allow me to choose that provision. So you could put everything in one group and basically build a job that lets you select all of the devices at provision. Here is the rule of thumb. The more decisions you make at provision, the less jobs you're going to have. The less decisions you're going to make at provision time, the more jobs you're going to have to create. It's pretty simple because you're making the decisions in the job itself. Now I'm going to go ahead here and I'm just going to add 2 groups for this one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now we're ready to go test this. So let's see this in action. All right, so now I got my onboard power user. I'm going to go here, select my site template. We're going to go down and I don't know, let's see if there's a Timothy or something in here. Sure, here we go. All right, we've selected Timothy. I'm going to go down and select a number. And notice now you're going to start to see some holes in the numbers because I've already used these, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select, I don't know, 5610 sounds great. Now, Phone groups. This is an example of a phone group. So what can you do with a phone group? Well, I can do one of two things. One, I could say, hey, this guy's a power user, he gets a 61. But you do have the ability in phone groups, I want to point out, to add more than one device. So now it's going to ask me for 2 MAC addresses. So if it's like an executive with a side phone or something like that, you could absolutely use this and make your decision at provision, so you have less jobs that you have to create. Instead of creating like an executive user and then a job and then an executive user with a side phone job or whatever it may be, you can create these options. So definitely think through the way that works for you. But I'm going to remove this 41 because I don't need it. This user is going to have one phone. I'm going to generate a MAC. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. Remember, this is just a fictitious MAC. So now I'm ready to go. So basically, I'm going to go and we see that Timothy, I'm going to grab his last name here. I'm going to come to search and let's go back to phone and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, he's not in there, and we know he's not in here because you guys just saw what I had in there. So we're going to go ahead now and hit perform. So Timothy is processing over here on the right side. This will probably take a couple seconds longer because now instead of building one phone, we are building all of his Jabber devices. But that was it. It was that fast. We do a view details. You can see all the phones that it built, right? I can, again, email these, a summary or the details here. But now I'm ready to go and take a look at what we actually built. So let's see. Look at that. So we got his hard phone and multiple devices, Jabber devices that were created. And all the same thing here. I'm not going to dive into all these, but all the user IDs, the owner user IDs are all set and everything. And then, of course, he's created over here. So, a very great example of doing what I would call a fully adopted user, right, with all the trimmings. And you can add, of course, things like single number reach as well into your job, which we'll cover a little bit more when we get into more complex jobs. So I'm going to go ahead and hit clear. And now we're ready to move on to different job types. So just a quick review, we've done add. We've shown you how you can add just a simple phone. We've shown how you could add a phone or user with a phone and then a user with multiple devices, etc. So what I want to move on to next is actually a quick demonstration of edit. We're not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on edit because it's really infinite as to what you can do. And we'll give you some ideas in some of our example videos of creating like advanced edit jobs, as well as some documentation that we're publishing on this stuff. So I'm going to go to Job Builder again. And I'm already there. And click Add. And I'm going to create, a simple job for just say like edit, let's say user class of service, right? And I've got a couple jobs in here that will show this, right? So depending upon how you're set up in your environment, what I want to do here is I'm going to go over to my template category and I'm going to basically choose this edit user no change, right? So basically I've created an edit template that is not going to make any changes to the user. I could apply changes to the user as well, but I'm not going to do that at this point. And then I want to do, I'm going to do a line right on here, and then I'm going to do a edit line, or sorry, I just got to click on line, edit line, no change as well, because I don't want to make, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I want to make a class of service change. So I'm going to do an edit line class of service, right? And then I'll add a phone in. So now I can go over here and do, an edit phone, no change. And, I want to point out that the way this is going to load is based on your order. So you may say, you know what, I don't really, I want to search for, finding devices by user is the easiest thing, right? That's why I put user on top. Now, when you come to the next thing you might want to do is, because you want to search by line, you want it to organize it by line. So what this is going to show is it's going to show the line and then the phone. And you could also flip it around. You could actually also say, hey, you know what? I actually want to do phone then line. So I could put this in here, right? I could come over here and do edit phone, no change. And then under here, put in line, and then put line change class of service. It's all about how it's going to find things and display. And this probably makes the most sense, actually, the way I'm doing it right now, because what'll happen when you see the job in action, you'll see what I mean, is that basically it's going to take, it's going to find by user, you're going to select the user, then it's going to go out and get all the associated items and then show you what you can edit based on your template. And in this case, it would have shown line first and then devices, but maybe we want to do, hey, show me by phone, then show me the lines on the phone, I can make the change. So you know what, instead of talking about it, let's go ahead and jump in here. We're going to save this off. All right, and let's go to a provision and take a look at it. And we can actually use one of the users that we worked on. So I'll actually do this. I'll look up 2 users just to show you what this looks like. So first, let's search for Bobby Moto, right? So we go ahead and pull up Bobby. So what you're seeing here, remember, we just created this guy. So basically, we've got an edit phone, and whenever you have an edit, it's going to show you the associated devices. Whoops, sorry there. I was trying to highlight that. But you can see that this is the MAC of the phone that he already has. And then below that is the line that he has, so 5606, right? So we know that back here, if we look at, not this gentleman, if we look at Moto, we can see that he has 1 phone and he has 1 line, and that's it. So this is giving you the option now to change him from his existing data, which is NYC unrestricted class of service, over to whatever else I need to. So I could then say, hey, you know what, I want to make him NYC internal. Also notice that if I want to in here, I can actually associate a new line with a device. So whenever you're doing edit, you can always associate another line to the device. We're not going to do that. It's always there as an option, but we're not going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit perform. So now what we should see is that this is done. So instead of having on his line, instead of having international, he should have internal, and now he does. So it made that change. And we could, basically change that to any class of service that's necessary. So that's an example of creating a class of service job. Now, I talked about layout, right? So let's look at something that's a little more complex, right? So Bobby Moto was pretty easy, but let's actually drag this job over again and look for the other gentleman we created, right? I think it was Timothy. And this will take a little longer because remember, Timothy has a whole bunch of devices, right? So this will be a much more expansive layout. So if you look here, every device it has, it's going to show the line multiple times because of the way we built the job, right? So notice I've got repetition of that line over and over and over again. Now, the fact is that technically I don't need to change this CSS everywhere because it's going to do the same thing, right? 5610 is shared as a shared line. But we're always going to display the line multiple times because if you are including things like the line on device settings, that is a per device, right? So this is an example of where you need to think about, when you're building your edit jobs, what you're trying to do or what's going to be most effective. And what I want to do here is let's not make any changes with this guy. Let's actually go back to that job, right? So let's clear ourselves out of here. Oh, sorry, let me go up. All right, let's remove this. And let's continue to play with this edit job just a little bit. So now let's go back to the edit class of service and flip it around like I originally had it. So let's go with the approach of saying, let's do the line first, right? Instead of, so we have line under here. Let's do, we'll do line first, sorry, not phone. Where's my line? There you go, 1, right? And then we'll go here, and then we'll go line change class of service, and then we'll go here and add the phones in. Remember, we only have to do 1 because when you're doing edit, it's going to bring up everything that's associated, right? So we're going to do edit phone, no change, and we're going to save. Okay, so let's take a look at how this this looks a little different, right? So we're going to go here. We're going to find the Timothy user right here. Okay, there's Timothy. Now this is going to load everything, so it's going to load the lines. So now what you're going to notice is this is more efficient because though it displays all the phones, right, the first thing it brings up is the NYC unrestricted. I have to make one change in here. It's not confusing. I make one change. I can make that NYC internal, right? I can hit perform, and it's going to make that change on all of the devices. Well, obviously it's going to make that change on all the devices anyway, but I don't have to do anything with the phones, right? They're basically not part of this at all. They're not being touched, except for the fact that it's ensuring that all the associations are maintained. So it was that simple. I filled out one field and I made my change. So we'll go ahead and hit clear. And that gives you an example of what you can do with edit. Now, there's a lot of other jobs that you can basically do, and one other job I want to show you around edit is something that would probably be very common, is like voicemail edit pin. So I've already created a template here to edit the pin. So let's go build a job for this as well, right? So, and I think that was a voicemail pin and not a call manager pin, but let's go ahead and click add, and let's just say edit user pin, right? Or in your case, you could do reset user pin. So then what we can do here is go to user. This is a case where we could do two things. You could use the no change, or you could use existing user, right? So we can use existing user here. And then what we'll do is we'll do voicemail, and we'll go ahead and hit continue. And then we'll go to Unity connection, and we'll do voicemail edit pin, and we'll hit continue. And then we'll assign this out again, right? This is a great help desk task there. We'll save this off, and let's take one quick look at this, right? So let's go up, let's go to provision, and let's go to reset user pin. And now I could do the same thing. I'll bring up this user that we had before, Timothy, again, because we know he has a voicemail account. And now I could reset the pin. So remember, well, I shouldn't say remember, but we put a default value. Remember, you can put a default value in the edit template for something. So I chose to expose this in case Timothy wanted his pin reset to something else. That's totally fine. But right now this is not showing his pin right now, right? This is showing what it's going to reset it to. So we know it's going to reset it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we can go ahead and hit perform there, and that'll make the change. So really, really that simple to get it done, to create a reset pin. You could also completely hide this by setting the value, not showing it, and literally they would come in here, find the user, just hit perform, and it would automatically reset the pin to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you could call the job reset pin to default. So you can get as creative as you want. Whatever your environment calls for is extremely flexible. Okay, so let's move on to offboard. Okay, so this is important. As important as onboard is a clean offboard. So I want to build a job now that is going to delete really pretty much everything that we've created for those users and phones. We'll focus on the user ones right now because it's just the easiest thing to do. But let's look at what I have. So I'm going to come to my templates, and I just want to review this. I have a delete templates that I already built for device, line, user, and voicemail. So if you think about it, that covers everything that we've already built. If I had more like WebEx or contact center or single number reach, I'd have to have a few more templates, but we'll get into those in some later video sessions. With that said, let's go to Job Builder, and let's build an offboard user. Now, the difference with deleting is it's not as hard because obviously you're just removing everything. So you don't have to create an offboard user for both your power user and your standard user that I created, right? I can do one single job. So we'll call it offboard user. And then how are we going to build it out? So you do this in a couple different ways, but the way I like to do it and the way I recommend doing it is come over here. We're going to find delete user, put it on top, and we're literally going to build the job we built before in reverse. So we're going to go to line. We're going to hit continue. We're going to go here. And then we're going to delete line, right? And then we're going to put one phone, one voicemail. Remember, when you're doing delete and when you're doing edit, you don't need to put multiple templates in there when you're doing this. Now, it doesn't know that I'm doing a delete, so it offers me more. But when you're doing a delete, you can only do one. You only need to do one. So Unity connection, we're going to do the same thing that we built. This looks just like my ad job, but in reverse for the most part. And delete device. And now I'm going to add in my templates for access, and we're done. So we're going to hit save. Let's test it out. So let's jump back to Provision. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the offboard user, and we'll select the user that we created there before, which was Moto. So we got Bobby Moto. Now, notice what it did. It went out and found everything that Bobby owns. All right, so it found the line, it found the voicemail, and it found the device, right? So you want to look at that stuff. Now, I could, if I said, oh my God, you know what? I don't want to delete the phone. I could undo it. So this is the undo right here. And it removes it from the delete and puts the garbage pail icon back there. Say, you know what? Actually, no, I do want to delete this. So you can reverse that. So if there's items that you want to remove, you can absolutely do that. Now, there's one exception to that. You cannot remove top items or the items below them. So I can't selectively say, I don't want to delete his line. I want to delete, but I want to delete, voicemail. The way the job is built, you can structure it a little bit differently to allow that to happen. But in this case, the way I built it, I'm planning on clearing everything out for the user every time. And what I'll also get into in some other videos is we completely understand that unfortunately in some existing environments, things are not associated like they should be. So if you're deleting people that have been built without our tool, they don't have the associations done. It's much harder. We can build some jobs. It'll never be as clean as if the user is properly associated, but we can build jobs to overcome that. So, and we'll talk about that, like I said, in another video. So now I'm ready to go. I'm going to hit perform. And in a few seconds, we should get a success. We did. If we want to look at the details, it tells you what you've done here, right? Now, if I go back to here, this is probably going to throw an error, and it did, because the phone that I literally was going back to has been removed. But we can come back and just go back to device, and we'll see that Mr. Moto is gone. And now the only person we have left here is Timothy, right? So we removed Bobby from there. If I do a find here, Bobby's removed, right? So let's go and remove Timothy as well on all his devices and see what that looks like. So we're going to clear this out. We're going to go back to jobs. Now, same, totally different user, right? Power user that I have here, but different, basically different delete scenario in the fact that it's going to remove a bunch of devices, right? So now it's going to load everything. Same job, different user type. And you can see that look at all those phones, right? It's got all queued up to be deleted. And I could remove one in particular if I wanted to, just like I showed you, but I want to clean this user out. So I'm going to click perform, and it's going to go and clean everything out. All right, so that's simple. Now, what's interesting about this is this job I built would not work for that common area phone. So one of the things I'll show you quickly is let's build out a job, another offboard job, that instead of being offboard user, right, you might want to have one in there that's just going to be like delete phone and line, right? Or something of that nature. You can do it however you want. You can put a little dash in here, it doesn't matter, right? So let's say delete phone line. Then we'll come over here. Now we're just going to do, and remember, it's important, you can search by multiple things, but you got to think about how you want to search for a phone. Do you know your phones by description, MAC address? Well, probably not MAC address, probably description, or do you know them by line? Because that's going to, how I build this job is going to be kind of critical, but I'll show you a couple tips and tricks here. So let's say for phones, right, I'm going to go to delete device, and then I'm going to go, I want to delete one line, hit continue, and let's go to line, and then we're going to do delete line, okay? So I'm going to hit continue there, and then I'm going to add my job access as usual, and we're going to hit save. So let's go see this in action here. All right. So we're going to bring up delete phone line, and now let's go back. What do we have in here, right? So I want to remove this. We've got that lovely conference room 202 phone in here, right? So if I know that, that's called conference room, I can start searching and we will narrow it down. So I've got a conference room 202 and I got a conference room 240. Great. I can find it that way. Now, let's say perchance that you actually knew that phone by 5602. You happen to have a list of the extension. Well, now you're like, great, my job doesn't work for that. Well, we can do something tricky here. So we do have a switch that you can flip. DN colon 5602. Boom. That flips the search to DN. So it's useful when you want to use a device search to flip over to a DN search, right? So we can kind of link things together. This will tend to be a little slower on search, but it does help me find the device, right? So now I can go and search for a device by MAC, by description, and by extension. So now I've brought it up, ready to go. I hit perform, and we're done. That's going to take like a second, and it's deleted. So if I come back here, we see conference room 202. I hit find. Now we don't see conference room 202. So really that simple to perform deletes. And before I end this kind of beginning session on jobs, I want to point out that everything that has been done by me, if I click on Acadian Provisioning Manager up top here, this is the top left corner, by the way, is logged. So if you can see, here's Tom's, that's me, audit trail, right? And I basically can see all the tasks that we performed today. The delete phone line is the one we just finished. And this is really providing you the same details that we just saw when we viewed the job at the end. So I can click on this and bring up a report, and I can drill down and look at the original data and the submitted data. But I want to show you that, let's say that you are trying to find something that's you're doing these all day long, and you need to find a job based on an extension. Hey, did I process this? If you'll notice up here, we can search by action name, service group, process date, status. That's great. What if I want to find out a job that I processed with extension 5606, right? So this will bring up every job that has 5606 mentioned in it at all, right? So the more detailed you get, obviously the better. But this is showing me where I've touched things with 5606 in it, right? And now if it was part of the MAC address, it would show up as well. So just note that if you do something that's really generic, then you're going to get a ton of data back. But so that's your audit log. Administrator, or as an administrator, under reporting, so system reporting, you have access to everything in the entire system. So of course, I'm the only person who's done anything in here right now, so I'm the only person you're going to see. But basically, if other people were making changes in here, it would be processed in this audit log. So with that said, that pretty much wraps up the first iteration of how to build provisioning jobs, or basic provisioning jobs, and Provisioning Manager. We will continue to be posting obviously more videos on this stuff as part of the series with tips and tricks and more advanced jobs as well. Well, thank you very much for your time.